PSN is down, or at least was down for 24 hours. It looks like services have now been restored, so it's kind of a good time to actually do a bit of a retrospective and see what actually has happened, because currently services are looking all green as of right now. But the fact of the matter is that something like this is absolutely unacceptable nowadays, especially when people are incredibly reliant on online services to run their titles and their games. So let's actually talk about it for a second, because there's a few things to mention. Some things not requiring an internet, there are some things that require an internet connection that really shouldn't. And then there's stuff like the 2011 outage of PSN that I will also be talking about as well later on, just to kind of give a bit of perspective on what happened here and how much of a worse situation it is for PSN to be down for a prolonged period of time, especially nowadays, like I said, regarding the reliance of online connections to get things done and dusted. So let's talk about the PSN network outage. So PSN was down, and Ask PlayStation on Twitter said, "We are aware that some users might be currently experiencing issues with PSN. For more details, go to the status page." And sure enough, when people clicked on the status page, while it's currently green now, when I visited it during the outage, it was all red. So it's clear that PlayStation was trying to minimize the amount of damage being done to their brand. As they say, we are aware some users might be experiencing issues. And that was just completely lowering what, people were experiencing, because it's clear that the denizens of the internet did in fact come together to check things out. And people were going to, like the Reddit PlayStation sub, for example, Reddit sub, whatever you want to call it, just to check things out. People on Twitter were, complaining and, constantly writing tons and tons of reply tweets and retweets and doing that sort of thing on Twitter. And then there's also like tons of people on places like PSN profiles going to various message boards, websites to just talk about how PSN is down and that they can't play any games. And you might be thinking to yourselves, wait, hold on. What about games that you've purchased from the PlayStation Store that you've downloaded to your console? Surely you would be able to play those, right? Without an internet connection. I would say yes and no. And the reason why I would say that is, so we have a couple of tweets here. One by Gigak, aka Gant, if you know him from his anime content on YouTube. He tried to play Metaphor Refantasio and gets a message saying, "You can't use this content, can't connect to the server to verify your license. Wait a while and then try again." So for those of you guys that don't know, I hesitate to use the word buy, but when you spend money on a game on the PS Store, you don't actually buy the game. Instead, you buy a license. And so that license requires a verification. Now, the only way a license doesn't require verification is if you select a PS5 and make that PS5 your main PS5. If you do not have a main PS5, like if you don't make your PS5 your main PS5, you require an online connection to play any digitally downloaded games, because the license is verified only when you're online or if you've made a PS5 your main PS5. So, say for example, I've got two PS5s in my household right now. I have one here downstairs and one upstairs. The upstairs one is used by my little brother and the one downstairs is used by me. And so my main PS5 is his one and his main PS5 is my one. So we can play each other's games. We're pretty much sharing our own digital libraries with each other. But the thing is that if PSN were to go down, I can't play my games on my PS5 and he can't play on his. So I have to go upstairs to play his. That can possibly work, but that might not work for everyone. Even if your PS5 is your main, your own digitally downloaded games may not necessarily work. And I'm talking about single player games that don't require an online connection. However, like I said, you are only given a license, and if that license cannot be verified, you may not be able to play the game. And so if PSN is down, PSN cannot verify the license to the game and therefore make digital games unplayable. That being said, if you have a disc, you can just chuck that in and you'll be able to play with no issues, given that the game you're playing doesn't require an online connection or doesn't require you to log into PSN to play it. So that's a completely separate thing altogether. MVG, aka Modern Vintage Gamer, had the exact same message when he was trying to play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, but I think in his replies he did actually say that his PS5 is his main, so it's clear that he bought Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 from the PlayStation Store as he was attempting to play it. But then I was talking about discs right now. Let's talk about disk drives actually, because so what happened was, when the PlayStation 5 first launched, there were two models you could buy. The physical, one with a disk drive and one without a disk drive. Then later on, a PS5 Slim was introduced that didn't have a disk drive, and so they introduced a disk drive as a separate purchase, and they also released the PS5 Pro, which, if I remember correctly, did not have a disk drive. So, if you wanted to play disc-based games on your PS5 Slim or your PS5 Pro, you would need to buy that additional disk drive. However, if you buy the disk drive, you still require an internet connection to pair the disk drive to your PlayStation 5. Because if you try and do it when PSN is down, you get the following message as Graham does it here. So he says in his tweet, "I've just tested this. You cannot pair a disk drive to a PS5 if PSN is down." And he said, "Given my collection is physical, my PS5 Pro is effectively bricked until PSN is up again." So the error message that he gets says, "Can't use your disk drive. Something went wrong when registering your disk drive to your PS5. Select try again to try registering your disk drive again. If the problem persists, wait for a while and then restart your PS5." And there's no reason that this should be the case, all things considered. If you have a disk drive, you should just be able to plug it in and just use it. Why do you need the internet to even pair it to your PS5 to begin with? So at the moment, from everything that I've seen so far, if you bought an original PS5, which is no longer being sold because they have stopped making those in favor of PS5 Slims, PS5 Pros, and yeah, I think just those two really. That if you bought one of those original PS5s and you have your games that you want to play on disc and those games are not online only or have online elements, you can play them no problem during the PSN outage. So then we come to this Tech Radar article that I have, which is pretty much doing like sort of an hour by hour play by play. And Jez Corden says something fairly interesting. PSN being down should be a wake up call for Microsoft/Xbox about how much money you could potentially lose if you rely on others' ecosystems to provide your access to customers. So, I was trying to play Genshin Impact when the PSN was down. However, the problem is I couldn't, because before Genshin Impact could let me play it, I need to go through two levels of logins. First, my PSN account needs to be authenticated by PSN, then that PSN account is tied to my Hoyoverse account. So once my PSN account has been authenticated by PSN, it then gets authenticated, that same account gets authenticated through Hoyoverse. With that being said, my Hoyoverse account works perfectly fine and just uses the same email address as my PSN account. So I thought, okay, if I can't play Genshin Impact on my PS5 right now while PSN is down, I'm just going to load it up on my phone and play it there. And it works perfectly fine on my phone during this time. Now this is in relation to Xbox going more third party, and because Xbox's games are more online oriented or usually require an online connection or have a lot more multiplayer elements to them, because their games are on PlayStation, if for some reason you require your PSN account to be authenticated by PSN, to allow you to play those games, you can't play those games. So you would not be able to play those Xbox games or those Xbox published games on PS5 if PSN doesn't allow you to authenticate your PSN account. So yeah, if PSN is down, you can't play those Xbox games. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. All things considered. And then we have this tweet here, people coming home to PSN being down. That really sucks, because let's be real, people who actually play games are largely wanting to stay away from their, day-to-day life. And all things considered, I would too, because the thing is that this has actually happened on a Friday afternoon for a lot of people. For me, this happened on a Saturday midday. So that is like prime time to just be gaming. And the thing is that I couldn't play a large amount of games, so I was largely on my phone playing Genshin instead. And of course, all things considered, this is all requiring an online connection, by the way. Things like being able to play games that you bought digitally, the requirement of the internet to pair your disk drive to your PS5 if you bought a disk drive separately, the fact that PlayStation is downplaying the actual severity of the issue, and the fact that all services were during this time affected by the PSN outage, and tons of people complaining about it here on Down Detector. So now let's talk about the 2011 Great PSN Outage, where PSN was down for 3 weeks and 3 days. And this was absolutely insane, because this was largely due to a hack, because with PSN being down for 24 hours, it's understandable people would say something like, if you are a PlayStation user, make sure to change your password on everything. This is looking more and more like a giant hack by the lack of their transparency. Because again, PlayStation tried to really downplay what the heck was actually going on in regards to all of this happening. And so, during the major outage of PSN back in 2011, 77.1 million PSN accounts had their personal data exposed, and this ultimately cost Sony $171 million, and also the network was down for nearly an entire month, short of a week. And at most, all PlayStation and Sony could do was apologize and provide some free games. So these were the games that were being offered by region, both PS3 games and PSP games. However, it's worth keeping in mind that nothing was offered this time around. And the thing is that nowadays, internet connections are required more than ever before. So the fact of the matter is that back in 2011, it might not have seemed like the biggest issue in the world, but the fact that it was a massive issue due to it being a hack and how many people were exposed due to the data leak that happened. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes to connections and internet in 2025, because PSN relies so much on the network being down for a whole day is absolutely unacceptable. And I don't know what on earth was going on, and I can't imagine seeing what it could have possibly been. That being said, however, we should never let Sony get complacent about these sorts of things, because we're reaching ever so closer to an all-digital future, and it's absolutely frightening. I want to give you an example of how hard it is to get physical media. So if I go to this screenshot here by Gant, aka Giguk, he's trying to play Metaphor ReFantasio. I've got that game physically, the PS4 version, mind you, and I also have the physical PS4 version of games like Epic Mickey Rebrushed. Now, these two games were incredibly hard to get a hold of. I, for the love of God, could not find anywhere where I could buy a physical copy of either of these games. Because the reason was that these games were only available in very specific regions. When it comes to Metaphor ReFantasio, this game was only available in Asia. I had to get an Asian English version of the game to be able to play it. In fact, I think I got the Hong Kong version of the game, so the copy that was sold in Hong Kong. And when it came to Epic Mickey, ooh, that was a fun one. So I'm talking about the PS4 version, by the way, not the PS5 version. And you might be like, why would you buy the PS4 version? The PS4 version gives you access to the digital PS5 version, so I feel like that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind. Whereas if you buy the physical PS5 version, you don't get the PS4 version. So I figured, hey, if I'm going to get a physical copy, I would rather get the one that gives me more stuff technically. And when it comes to the PS4 version of Epic Mickey Rebrushed, that's only available in certain European countries. And I just so happened to get the German version through eBay. I had to pay slightly more for both of these games than if I were to buy it digitally through PS Store. But hey, it was totally worth it, just so I could chuck the disc in and just play those games without needing to worry about an internet connection, or the fact that my disc drive didn't need to be connected to the internet for it to work. So hey, I mean, that's at least something. Yeah, so with physical media dwindling away, both physical PS4 games going away, the fact that PS5 games are not being sold physically as much as PS4 games when they launch, or at the same time during this same time of their life cycle here, the fact that digital only consoles exist, there's no way in hell that consoles should go away from physical media. I feel like it's probably the most important thing. People can scream at me and say, you're an old man for thinking that, you know, the internet is going to go away, or that the internet is not going to be required. But the problem is that if you are playing on consoles, you are required to be connected to the internet. That's why stuff like, I think someone here, that's why Does It Play is such an important service here. As Graham, tagged in Does It Play. Does It Play is such an important service to the world. Games that require patches shouldn't require patches. Like, games should just be released fully complete, so that when you put a disc in, the 1.0 version can play you from beginning to end, not some buggy glitchy mess or a game that is technically incomplete. I feel like using an example like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League as an example, or Marvel's Avengers, if you buy the disc version of either of these games and you chuck in the disc and you play the 1.0 version, but you're not connected to the internet, you will not be able to play them. Technically, both games did have an offline version, an offline way of being able to play both games, but the problem falls under the fact that both of those were patched in after the fact. And that should not have needed to be the case. They should have just out of the box had that function already available. Just saying. But let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. A lot happened. I'm incredibly angry and frustrated at PlayStation for just dropping the ball here. And I mean, they drop the ball fairly regularly, so I feel like, you know, there isn't really much more to say about that. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year. With all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.